Welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast, your source for the latest information about your Army Black Knights, with your host, Sal Interdonato.
Hey, what's up, Black Knight Nation? We're back with on our podcast. We have a very special guest tonight, Bob Beretta. Also, Kevin Gleason joining us again for some talk with Bob. Bob's worked at the West Point in the athletics department for 30 years, and we're going to talk to Bob a little bit about his time there, some memories, some experiences. I know there's one experience I want to talk about, and we're going to wish Bob congratulations on getting the athletic director's job at Lemoyne too. You can follow us on all podcast platforms. Be sure to rate, review us, and subscribe. And we'll welcome Bob to the podcast. How you doing tonight, Bob?
Hey, Sal, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the time spending with both you and Kevin.
I'm sure your audience by now, Sal, has gotten sick of me. This is twice in about 3-week period there.
Kevin, what's going on tonight?
Nothing much, Sal. All good. Just happy for Mr. Beretta getting this position. Certainly well deserved after 3 decades plus, I think, at the United States Military Academy, and I'm really excited to see where he takes it from here.
Yeah, Bob, really appreciate you hopping on. First off, I don't know. I just want to walk through your ties to the Hudson Valley area, right? I mean, you grew up here. You have definitely a passion for the area, a passion for West Point. When I took a step back from what I was doing for 23 years, you were one of the first people to reach out to me and wish me well, and it meant a lot. And it wasn't just about Army sports; it was about like local sports in general. How did you get kind of started at West Point? How did you get started there to get your career going?
Well, first of all, Sal, and Kevin, you guys are dear friends. So we started out as business associates and developed this mutual respect, I think, and I think the world of both of you gentlemen. You know that. So yeah, I'm a local guy. I grew up here and went to St. Bonaventure, played baseball up there, came home, contacted the folks at West Point. I had actually spent 2 summers while I was in college as the sports editor of the Point of View during the summer. And back then we were taking pictures and developing film and printing prints and all that, which I thought was going to be a great experience. I thought I was going to be set for life. Little did I realize that skill was not going to be needed in about 5 years from that point in time. But I contacted the folks, Bob Kinney in the sports information office. I got to meet him during my time at West Point, and Matty Salvati, and just on a lark reached out to see if they really knew of any jobs in the area, because my first choice coming out of school was going to be to try to stay home if I could, somewhere in this area. I was working in the sports information office at St. Bonaventure at the time and thought that I'd like to make a run at that as a profession to try to get into college athletics. And when I contacted them, they said, hey, this might work out well. We're thinking about adding an intern in our sports information office. We don't have that position. So I went down to West Point and I met with Carl Ulrich, the great athletic director, went on to become the executive director at the Patriot League, the first. Just a wonderful man, just a man for the ages. And he brought me down. We went to the Park restaurant. His favorite was bread pudding. And everyone told me that if Mr. Ulrich offers you bread pudding, you're in. So at the end of lunch, we had a cheeseburger and then he offered me bread pudding. So I left there feeling pretty good about my chances to land that job. And I did. And this has been home, and I've been there ever since. 34 years later, I'm still in the athletic department at West Point.
I shortchanged you a couple of years. I was writing 30 for the whole time, Bob.
It's all right. You're trying to make me younger. I like that, Sal. These days, I told someone today as I was calling some of the coaches up at Lemoyne, and I'm still trying to reach out to everyone if I can here. I said, I went from being the youngest person in those rooms to the oldest overnight. I don't know what happened, but 3 decades flew by pretty fast. And, when you're in a great place and you're passionate about it and it's not like going to work, that can happen. And I was blessed to have that happen to me.
Mm.
Yeah, I look at like all the even like to the end here with the responsibilities. It's what your job detailed. Yes, you were in charge of sports information. Yes, you were a big part of your job is also schedule making for Army football, right? And you even took over as interim softball coach a few years back, right? I mean, so yeah, you wore a lot of hats in the department, and certainly that shows the passion that you had for West Point, right? No doubt.
No doubt. Absolutely, Sal. I think the one thing I tried to pride myself in was being able to reinvent myself and move out of sports information to corporate sponsorship. I ran the ticket office in the development area for a while without a whole lot of experience in those areas, just on the job training. And I think we sat down and figured out that at one point or another, I had the opportunity to oversee every area of the athletic department with the exception of one, and that was compliance over the years. So yeah, I even served a year as the head softball coach, and that was so rewarding. It came out of a situation that wasn't so great with our program, and they asked me to step in because of my experience on the travel side, coaching for so many years here in the Hudson Valley. Thought it was going to be for 2 weeks, and we stayed on for the whole year. But again, to make those types of relationships at that granular level with those young ladies, it forever changed me. And it's funny, during this process, I received several text messages from my former players who are still at West Point, and they're home for Christmas break right now. But they're really thrilled for me, and those are the type of moments that are really, you can't put a price tag on it. It was a year that took me away from my career trajectory of hopefully becoming an athletic director, but it was a year that I wouldn't trade for anything.
No doubt. Kevin, what was your first? When did you first meet Bob? I'm guessing it was on the Army football beat at some point in the '90s. I'm guessing.
Yeah, absolutely, Sal. I started the Times Square Record December 18th, 1989. So it wasn't long after that. I wasn't afforded the opportunity to go to that Army Navy game. I guess I just missed it by a couple weeks. So 1990 came around, and by the time the '90 season came into effect, I was just helping out, doing whatever I could. A lot of high school coverage, mostly high school coverage. Every now and then they throw me a bone and let me go down and do an Army sidebar or whatever, or maybe a midweek story, and that's when I got to meet Bob and some of his guys down there. And the thing that's interesting about the sports information department is, and you know this as a writer, it's not always like the perfect relationship with writers, because writers sometimes have their own agendas, or often have their own agendas. Sports information directors essentially have not an agenda, but they want to shine a positive light on their institution, whether it's academy or any college, and there's always a potential for conflict there. The thing that I loved, and Bob and I clicked right away, was because he gave me that autonomy, and he did what he could to make my job better, as opposed to, there are some sports information people that you would find that would maybe, do everything they could to maybe shield you from that hard story, or that story that might not always, shine a positive light. But we had that trust, and Bob always knew that, he knew that I wasn't going to wrong them in the sense of, burn them in the sense of writing something that wasn't true, or something that was conniving. So we had a great mutual respect, and it turned into a 3-decade friendship, great bond that we had, and it's all born out of mutual respect. And that's the thing that I admired always about Bob, was the fact that he had a great respect for the writers, great respect for everybody, and that carried over to his job. And that's why the past couple of weeks, since this announcement was made, he's gotten texts and calls and emails from people all around the country. I think Bob's probably spent as much time working at the academy as he has answering all these messages that he's gotten in the past couple of weeks. And that's a tribute to him and who he is and what he's about. And I guess just the point of my soliloquy there was that he's been able to form all these relationships just from, being the type of guy who's A, professional, B, extremely talented and well respected.
Thank you, Kevin. That's means a lot to me coming from both of you gentlemen. You know how much I respect both of you and the work that you did. And yeah, I think there's certainly time for in that industry. There's always that potential for conflict, but I think we respected each other. And my job was always to protect the academy first, but I also wanted to treat the writers and the media members with that respect. I know that you have a job to do, and I think that as long as we were being fair to each other, then I think that our relationship would flourish, and that's why it did flourish, and that's why we're still friends over all these years, and all of us kind of out of those lanes. But here we are tonight, and I think it really comes down to relationships and having really solid bonds of trust, and I think that we developed that. All three of us have developed that with each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt, no doubt. Bob, just during your time in the Army, and when did schedule making start getting into your on your plate? And can you just discuss what it's like as Army being an independent team to make a schedule, especially this year where it was a little bit crazy with the pandemic and a lot of games were lost?
So that's a great question, Sal. People ask me all the time, and it really, honestly, it came out of a friendship with Bobby Ross. Bobby was our head football coach, and I was the sports information director at the time, and I developed a really good relationship with Bobby, and we were talking every Sunday morning. I'd go in and talk to him about the previous day's game, and we got talking about scheduling and schedules. And at the time, I was not working that scheduling. There was several athletic directors previously, and he wasn't being brought up to speed, I should say, on who we were scheduling, even though it was at the time probably 5 or 6 years down the road. So we had an athletic director change, and Kevin Anderson came in and started talking to Coach Ross, and Coach Ross offered, hey, why don't you have Bob kind of help you with that? We have a good relationship, and that's how it started. Kevin began as the athletic director and asked me if I would step in one day on a call, and then I pretty much at that point took over all those responsibilities. As an athletic director, you have so many plates in the air, so many glass balls in the air, and as an independent, it can be overwhelming. If you think about at Army, we have to schedule 10 games a year. We have the Navy game and the Air Force game, but those other 10 games need to be filled. So sometimes scheduling one game can take 25 to 30 calls. And if you do that times 10 each year, and at Army, we also like to work, at least I do, my model has been to try to work 10 to 12 years out, because we're very strategic in who we schedule and who we want to schedule. I think we try to target opponents that we feel we can be competitive against on a weekly basis, try to be smart, look at geographic regions where we can leverage that visibility from a recruiting standpoint, and then find that balance. You don't want to go to the same area multiple times. So there's a lot that goes into it. We look at weekends, holiday weekends, whether we want to be home or away for the Corps of Cadets. So there's a large matrix that goes into it. It's not just kind of throwing darts at the dartboard and see who will be interested. It really is it's a dance and it takes two to dance. So sometimes we have the perfect opponent, we feel like, lined up, and we may call them and they may have no interest, or that date might not work. And for Army as an independent, those November dates and October dates are vital to being able to schedule, because most of the conferences black those dates out for their conference members. So it can be extremely challenging to fill dates in November and mid to late October. And that's quite candidly, that's, I think, one of the most serious challenges to an independent is being able to schedule games in October and November. Because if you can't schedule games, you don't have opponents, you can't play, right? You're not going to play a 6 or a 7 game season. So that has always been a great challenge. We've benefited a bit here recently by the influx of a few independents, with Liberty becoming an independent, with UConn becoming an independent, leaving the AAC, with UMass going that route, and quite honestly, with them being so geographically friendly to us, right, close by, those are great opponents for us. So you're going to see a steady diet of UConn and UMass over the next 10, 12 years. I've worked with their athletic directors at both schools. David Benedict at UConn and Ryan Bamford at UMass have become good friends just because we call all the time. And particularly Ryan, who once interviewed for a job here at West Point, very good friends with Zach Spiker, former basketball coach at West Point. And so we've done 10 and 12-year series with them. As it turns out, it might have been like, hey, a 3-year, then we added another 3-year, and then another 3-year. And then this year, during the pandemic, when we went through about 200 iterations of our schedule, one of those iterations had us playing a home and home against UMass this year and a home and home against UConn. Now, that was where we thought that, hey, at least if we're going to lose all these games because the conferences are going to block out conference games only and you can only play one opponent, we're going to be in trouble. So I started calling the independent ADs in March, all of them, Notre Dame, New Mexico State, Liberty, UConn, UMass, and talked to them about a matrix that just looked like a home and home schedule against independents. And so we had many options lined up. As it turned out, the one school I thought we'd end up playing at least once was Liberty. And we ended up playing them. We didn't play them. And maybe it was a good thing. They were so good this year. But, and then, so one by one, as they started falling off, that hurt. And so when UConn decided that David decided not to play football this fall, that hurt us twice. It didn't just hurt us once. That wiped out 2 games at that time. And then within a week, Ryan decided to do the same thing with UMass, and that crushed us. We lost 2 more games there. Of course, Ryan came back online about a month, 7 weeks later, and asked if we would play them, but we were filled at that time. The date that he wanted to play us was the week before the Air Force game, and we wanted to keep that week open if we could. And it didn't work out, but it was very dynamic. But it's a very in-depth process, and I've done it for now 15 years, and it's been a great experience. I've made tremendous friendships with athletic directors, great networking, and right now we're scheduled. One of my last duties here at West Point before I depart in April will be to ensure that all of our contracts are solid and maybe add in a couple more series. But we're scheduled for the most part through 2034. And we have a couple of bye games, a couple of guarantee games that might extend to 35 or 36. So we're in really good shape. I think this program is set up for long-term success from a scheduling standpoint. And that's important for us because we can lock in the opponents that we want to lock in when we want to lock them in. And we don't have to worry about what tomorrow might bring. We have contracts in place with buyouts. So if schools call us and want to make a change, they'll have to write us a check to do. We might have to scramble, but we're as protected as we possibly can be.
Wow. It seems like pretty detailed. I was going to ask you if you're going to miss making those schedules, but when you scheduled, that's 2036. I think you left Army in pretty good shape. Talk about the opportunity you have now at Lemoyne and to take the next step to lead a department.
Yeah, thanks, Sal. It's a really intriguing opportunity for me, to be honest with you. I didn't always want to become an athletic director, but as time went on, I thought my career path was pointing towards that. I was involved here at West Point a couple of times ago when it went around, and I was not fortunate enough to be selected, but I stayed on. And I had a run at a job at my alma mater 5 years ago. Basically offered the position and had to turn it down due to some family situations that arose. And so this opportunity really intrigued me because I just felt like there was a strong fit. I learned about the job last February, and on a lark, I drove up one day to just walk around campus. I wanted to see if I felt like it would be a fit for me. And this is before I even applied. And I spent a day. I thought I was going to just drive around campus and drive home. And I spent the day on campus, walking around, talking to students, talking to staff members. I joked with the folks at Lemoyne that if it was at West Point, I probably would have been shot because I didn't belong anywhere there. But I walked around acting like I knew that where I was and that I should be there. And so I spent a day, and I really was intrigued by it. their culture is very much aligned with my own value set. It's a faith-based institution. I went to St. Bonaventure, very similar to St. Bonaventure, a smaller campus. I felt like I really wanted to get on a smaller campus and try to develop those granular relationships that I talked about, that I was able to develop with our softball team. I really wanted to get back to a place where I could maybe get to know all 400 student athletes by name and support them. And it's tough to do that at West Point because our young people are so structured, they're so busy, and they're fantastic. I've stayed there 34 years and I love it, and I'm going to be heartbroken to leave. But this is an opportunity that I think that it was kind of calm me. Went through the interview process in March. Everything was suspended because of the pandemic. Went through the summer not knowing what was going to happen. So I really, at that point, was really busy, focused on what was going on at Army with our scheduling. As you know, as we touched on, it was crazy. Went through the football season, and of course, you're just fully consumed by football, and especially this year, not knowing if we were going to make it to the start line. I always tried to have an opponent in my pocket in case we lost one due to testing. And then in October, the folks at Lemoyne called me and asked me to go up for a 2-day interview, a very intensive interview process, about 18 hours of interviews on a Monday and a Tuesday. I left there, and I felt very much at ease with the leadership. President Lemura, just a fantastic individual. Bob Raklitis, who's the board chair, was very involved, very instrumental in me going to Lemoyne. I met all the coaches. I had lunch with student athletes, and I felt really good about that opportunity. So I was hopeful, and we went through December, and finally, just here recently, last Thursday, we made the official announcement that I would start in May, and I'll stay here through March. And it's a little bittersweet, only because West Point has been my home for so long, and to meet fantastic people like yourself outside of the academy, and then being able to work with our cadet athletes on a daily basis, the officers, our generals, General Williams. It's just been a blessing. But I really felt like this was an opportunity that if I didn't take this opportunity, I thought I would regret it the rest of my life.
What do you think just about with Bob taking the next step? How do you see that panning out, just from what you know of Bob, the character you know about?
I only got a little bit of that, Sal, but I think the question was in terms of my thoughts on Bob getting that position, or you froze up on me. You hear me okay?
Yep.
You were breaking up on the question, Sal. I just didn't fully get the audio.
Oh, I was just saying, just that Bob's character. What do you think how Lemoyne will bank out for Bob with just knowing the person you know in Bob?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the thing about Bob is he's a natural leader, you know, and he was that as an athlete at Marlboro. He's a leader. He's a leader at West Point from the moment he got there. Really, I remember even in his early days there as a assistant to Bob Kinney. I know Bob entrusted Bob Beretta with all of the duties that he had, you know, and he had a great amount of respect. And here's Bob Kinney, you know, was probably on his fourth decade of being in that business, and he entrusted Bob Beretta with all of the important duties of that department. And Bob was, you know, not only managed but thrived in it, and then he was perfectly suited to take over upon Bob Kinney's departure. And that's it, you know, and that's why he's a natural for any athletic director job. You know, you're talking about a guy who's has great leadership skills. I think a lot of them are innate. I had the great luxury of coaching travel softball alongside Bob, which is two of the best summers of my life, you know, and not only because our daughters got to play together, you know, And it was just, I told him that recently. Those are two of the best summers of my life, just watching him lead this team and the job that he did communicating his goals and just, watching him impart the lessons to these young ladies anywhere between ages of really 15 to 18 or 15 almost to 19, which is a really long stretch of ages when you're talking about young ladies, and he was able to do it so adeptly. So best way to answer your question is that Bob's leadership is going to carry over to this position, fluently and superbly, and that's what I'm excited about with Bob, to see him mold a department in the same way that he molded departments at West Point, surrounding himself with good people, and just not micromanaging, being able to trust in the talent of others, which is a tremendous art form in and of itself. All these qualities that Bob possesses, I can't wait to follow it from afar. And every now and then I might have to make a little road trip to Syracuse to make sure that, make sure the Dolphins are doing it on the field as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Always invited. Fins up, guys, for sure.
When things get back normal,
There,
I'm head up. So we have a drop in right now. There he is.
Hey, fellas.
Tim, welcome.
Hey, everybody.
I can't hear the audio very well, but I recognize that face from afar.
It's good to see you guys. Hello, Bob. Hello, Kevin. Hello, Sal.
good to see you.
I hear you better now, Bulk. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. I have to apologize in advance. There's a 3-month-old making a lot of noise right now. But
congratulations to Tim Volkman, a newly minted father. 3 months, his beautiful baby daughter Evelyn, and I will tell you, I've seen several pictures, and thank goodness she's a spitting image of her mother.
Hey, that's all the time we have today. So.
And there she is. As
what did I tell you?
On cue. Beautiful. Congratulations, y'all.
Thanks very much. So yeah, I've been listening a little bit to what Bob's talking about, and everything. It just brings back a lot of memories. It was 2007 when I started at West Point, and my wife Tracy, she started there on that same day, and ever since then it was. We were joking about it at dinner time. Everything we have right now is basically because of Bob Beretta. You know what I mean? He brought us together at work, and it kind of started our relationship, and it went from there. But it was just all about family back when we were there, and it was just we had a great team, and we worked hard, and we played hard, and it was all thanks to Bob. I mean, he was an amazing person to work with. I won't even say for. It was working with Bob. He just gave you the confidence to do your job. He didn't micromanage you, like you said, Kevin. He let you do your job, but you knew you had top cover. If you needed assistance or someone to have your back on something, he was always there. So it was an amazing 6 years that I had with Bob at West Point, and I'm proud to call him a friend until this.
Thanks, Tim. It's a mutual respect, and I think that's what we tried to do. We tried to formulate a family atmosphere, and it wasn't forced because we brought in great people. We respected each other, and we spent as much time together as we did with our family members. They were our family, so I felt like it was really important that we tried to get along, and it wasn't hard with the group that we had. We had a fantastic team with Tim and Tracy and Brian Gunning, Mike Albright, who was at Orange County Community College before those guys, and John Terry, who was at Bucknell, and on and on. I can go with Pam Flanke and Maddie Salvani, who's obviously been the backbone of that area forever at West Point. There'll be a statue for Maddie someday, but I don't think she'll ever leave. That's the problem. So but it was about the people. It's always about relationships, and it's what Sal and you and Kevin and I talked about before, and it's the same with Tim and Tracy in our team there. It's about relationships, and hopefully I'll be able to build those similar type of relationships up at Lemoyne. I've been trying to spend as much time on the phone as possible. I just got off the phone with the head softball coach. Guys, you like that, and pass along a couple names of some local talent that I've had my eye on here. So now we'll try to recruit them to Lemoyne here if we can over time.
If I could just jump in, I mean, one of the things about that, and I know Tim will agree too, is that the sports information people, I don't know if everybody's familiar with it, they all work like dogs. I mean, you know, I watched it myself, and that's the one thing that we always had that initial bond to. That I think the newspaper people and the sports information people, I think we're always like vying for who worked more per week. You know, somewhere between 75 to 100 hours, I think was about the cutoff it seemed. But and that's to me that's why it was so important for Bob to have that type of approach. The family type atmosphere that Tim talked about. I think is so necessary because you're together so often, you're working so hard, but if you can understand that's for a common cause and that there is a lot of reward at the end of the tunnel, then I'm sure it makes it a lot better, and that's the big thing that we shared as newspaper people too, is that, you work so many hours but at the end of the day, you really get the feeling and impression that you're doing it for something that's really a lot of fun and really, in different ways special too.
Well, you have those shared responsibilities that Kevin, you were writing on behalf of others, right? That's selfless service and being a selfless servant. And I think sports information people, athletic communications people, media relations people, they're all about putting the story first, putting other individuals first. So it's that selfless service component that I think that thread runs throughout that industry. And I think there's a deep respect, and there's a deep respect when you show up at the press box early before anyone else, and there's media members there. And then after, when the lights go out, whether it's in a gym or at a football stadium, and the only people that are still there are your communication staff and your writers. So that gives you a great idea of the work ethic and the workload required in both professions.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
We always enjoyed our.
I had to change devices, guys. I'm sorry. I'm back now.
I thought you took an early dinner break there, Sal. But, I was going to point out to you that's okay. We'll take it from here, and we'll see you on next week's podcast.
I thought you could handle it, so I'll just listen. You guys.
I thought he went to go check on the
great level of confidence in all of us. I appreciate that.
Kevin,
No
I thought he went to go check on the net score.
I got one thing to talk about, and you guys can keep on going. I just want to add something toward the end. So, hey, Tim, were you in the press box on that snowy day in October 2012? Were you still around at that point?
I was there. I wasn't working in athletic communications. I was working on the A Club at that point. But yeah, I was around for that. That was I'll never forget that. That was quite a weekend for sure.
October 31st. I think October 30th, 31st, Bob. You got to remember that day pretty well, right?
Yeah, I mean, I slept on the floor of the press box that night. I can tell you that. And we had. I actually moved out into the stairwell because it was warmer in the stairwell than it was in the press box itself. And we had a few folks that stayed in. Some went over to Holler Center. I went in the stairwell, and I came out, and most of the people were gone. And I didn't know what happened. I think they had an escape plan. And, West Point in the soldier's creed is you never leave a fallen soldier behind. But I got left behind that day up there in the press box.
Well, I actually have my own little piece to that. I think maybe the only time I've ever gone to an Army West Point game as a fan. I covered the team pretty much as a beat writer or columnist from 1993 to 2017. But that day we had I was coaching youth football, coaching my son in youth football that season, and all the coaches and families got together, and so we planned the trip to West Point. Well, sure enough, we got a bunch of tickets, and what do you know? It falls on one of the worst, snowstorms in Mid-Hudson history, I think. We got there well enough, I remember the snow, how hard it was coming down as we approached the game, but got there, and it wasn't just the snow, it was that bitter cold.
Yeah.
And by halftime, the whole group of us, there had to be like 15 of us, we were done. Plus, we figured we had to get a start on the ride home, of course, which wound up taking like 4 hours.
Yeah.
I think I had like 4 heart attacks on the way to the drive because we got detoured. We couldn't get out to 293, so we had to go all the way down to Rockland County and then go up the thruway to get home at about 25 miles an hour on the thruway. But I didn't mean to steal your thunder because I did get to sleep in my own house that night. So.
Yeah, I was on the floor of the press box too, and I just remember I'm always like have to be the last one, to go to sleep. So it's like Sports Center reruns, then crash on your coat on the floor of the press box, and just hope you can get out in the morning, right? And then going down the hill toward Woodbury Commons, trees down, everything. But that was the Max Jenkins game, I think, where Max Jenkins took over at quarterback and had a really big game and against Fordham. Yeah, that was one of the highlights of my beat writing career, no doubt. So
it was like 42-0 at halftime or something. I'm like, geez. They're running the snow. West Point players were running the snow like they were running on a plush track, and Fordham was sliding all over the place, like they were sleigh riding.
Not too many people have ever said what I'm about to say, but I've never been so happy to live in Highland Falls, New York that day because I was able to walk home.
Max Jenkins was a guy from Texas. He was from Texas too, so I don't know how much he saw snow, but he took advantage of it, no doubt. That was fun. Any other game day memories for you, Bob? I know you probably have too many of them to reveal, but are there any game day memories that strike you that in your years at West Point?
Sal, could you repeat that? You were breaking up there.
Oh, sorry. Any game day memories that other than the snow game that you might have?
Well, there were some. There's so many, really. Quite honestly, it's so hard to think back. Obviously, the snow game, but Army Navy games, they're just incredible all the way to this year where it ended like it did. Last minute victories. Anytime I was in a locker room with Jeff Monken was a highlight, to be honest with you. Anytime, and I'm sure your listeners, viewers have seen it on social media when he gives the I want to fight speech, I break out even thinking about it right now into goosebumps. He's a leader of men. He's the right man for this program. He will be for many, many years. So anytime I had a chance to be with Coach Monken in there, it was a thrill. And honestly, it was a learning experience that I was able to bring onto the coaching fields and try to teach life lessons to our girls. And now I'll hopefully bring that to Lemoyne and try and share some of those life lessons there as well. A lot of the things that I talk about are things that I learned from being in our locker rooms with great coaches, whether it was, some phenomenal basketball coaches, Zach Spike or Dino Gaudio when he was there for a while, Les Whitkey way back when, some of the baseball dugout huddles, Danny Roberts and Joe Salano, and now Jim Foster. I could go on and on. Being around Dave McGarity, Maggie Dixon, those years were incredible. What happened with Maggie was that's something that'll stand out always in my memory bank. Being around Dave and Brian Riley. I mean, how can you not learn when you're around Brian Riley? I mean, he is West Point. Congratulations to Brian and the family. Just registered their 1,000th cumulative victory. I mean, you talk about a leader. Brian Riley is the epitome of that. So I when I think about moments, I think about people more than moments, Sal. And I think that's how it should be about West Point. West Point is all about the people, whether it's the cadet athletes or the people that you have an opportunity to work with. For me, it's those memories, it's those imagery, it's those images, it's those people, it's those relationships and friendships.
We talk a lot about the football program, but you were heavily involved in the baseball program, and that had a ton of success going to the NCAAs. I mean, I think you were able to get the Yankees up to West Point too, right? Or no?
Yeah, no, that's correct. And that honestly, when I look back on things, that'll always be one of my favorite moments at West Point. I grew up as a kid going to West Point every year, watching either the Mets or the Yankees play the Army team. My father did not like going into New York City, so that was his treat to me, was bringing me to West Point each year to see the Yankees or the Mets and maybe get an autograph or two. So to have an opportunity to bring the Yankees back was just I can't even put it into words, and was able to make some great friendships with people like Lon Trost or Brian Cashman, Joe Girardi. Those people were fantastic to work with. We had a football relationship. We were able to talk and expand about bringing the baseball team up there and playing playing an exhibition game. So yeah, that will always be a highlight for me, only because it reaches back to my days as a youth. And I think, it was something we were able to bring to the community. And hopefully there were a lot of young people in the stands that day, and we made some lifelong memories for them.
Yeah, you're right. It's so much about the people, and it's not just we focus a lot about the football, but the baseball program was a success. And I remember Team USA. I remember Team USA having one of their practices or scrimmages at I remember talking to Steph Curry at Crystal Arena. I mean, that doesn't happen too often either. So I mean, it's crazy. Just what West Point. I hope that more has an NHL game been there yet. I'm trying to think. No, an NHL team has practiced there. Why am I saying game? Tim, NHL teams used to practice there a lot too, right?
Yeah,
we had
did.
An exhibition game there at one point too. I hope you guys can hear me. I have to get a battery charger because my phone is about ready to die. But
that's what happened.
Yeah, we've had an exhibition game there too. I think the Devils had an exhibition game there a few years back.
Yeah, just Kevin, when we're talking about Bob's just love for West Point, and to bring that a Yankees to West Point is something that you didn't think would be possible, but he ended up be a part of making that happen, and that was I can't imagine what just getting a franchise like that at West Point. That's an incredible. It's always effort. It seemed like there was always some effort that you in the background, that Bob was always working effort in the background to get things done at West Point. So.
Yeah, I mean, the Yankees especially, I mean, that's a coup, the relationship that they formed with the Yankees, and being able to, to rely on the Yankees coming up and spend some time, like you said, with the GM and the manager. The other thing I think about with Bob, and I know he feels fortunate too to have been able to work, more than half his life at a place right down the road from where he grew up, and not everybody gets that opportunity. I'm from the Albany area. I had to travel a couple hours to get the job that I wanted, and here he was, able to do it down the road. And after being, I think, probably the third or fourth most famous Marlboro High alumni, behind, of course, I think Rob Bell, Jamal Brown, and Snooky Polizzi. I think he's probably about 4 on that list, but it's very high. It's a high grade for Bob, and but no, in all seriousness, he gets to work at West Point, where I know in many ways that was his dream job, and will probably always be his dream job in a sense, as much as he's looking forward to the next chapter. He is able to live his dream and get paid for it, which is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, I just remember my first years on the Army football beat, and yes, I had covered some West Point sports before, but it was Stan Brock. Stan Brock was the coach, and it was just like being able to have that comfortability, knowing that, hey, new coach, new beat writer, kind of a little bit of a fresh start for what our newspaper was covering. And I just remember, yes, there's times where there's some conversations going on, right, Bob, that we have to have as far as, but all in all, it was always fair. It was always fair, and that's something I'll never forget. That kind of vaulted me, giving me my start. That's continued my love for the job, no doubt. When you can have that working relationship. So.
Yeah, and I'll also say this.
Stan, I also remember the important part about Stan was when you shook his hand, you had to make sure that your right hand wasn't actually broken because he had hands like the size of like 3 human beings.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say for you guys both, I mean, a tribute to both of you, because it is not easy being a beat writer for an unsuccessful program, right? I mean, you guys have been there when times were good, and you've been there when times were bad. And you know, it's not easy for either side. It's not easy for a beat reporter to be with a team that loses 14 straight games to Navy and can't muster a winning season but once maybe in 10 years. And it's hard for the PR guy. For Tim and I, you know, our job was always to try to put the program in the best light. And we knew that, hey, it's a lot easier for you guys to do your job when we're 10-2. The coach is never in a bad mood. The players are never in a bad mood. No one ever walks away from an interview request. So it's a tribute to both of you that you were able to execute your mission so adeptly and do such a wonderful job, because that's not easy. And we struggled for a long time. There's no doubt about that. And now, you know, we got it right. You know, we got it right on a number of different fronts, and you bring in the right leader, and scheduling works, and suddenly success manifests success, and things are a lot better now than they were 10 years ago. No question about that.
Now, Sal, I would say Sal had it a little more challenging than I did. I got fortunate enough to cover the 93 team, starting with 93, and they were 6-5. They had a pretty good team. 94, I think, were 4-7, but then they started turning around 95 with that 5-5-1 Cantaloupe team, and then 96 I got to cover, and then teams were kind of up and down after that, but then then I think Sal, I think you came aboard. What year did you come aboard? Right in time for, I think,
2007. Yeah, Stan Brock's first year. Yeah, a couple 3-9s, but yeah, and then Rich Ellerson. And hey, they did make the bowl game in 2010, so it wasn't terrible.
Right,
it was 4 years, but then there was
You didn't, yeah. So you weren't on the 2000 team.
No.
Well, you were there, Kevin.
I did the Todd Berry press conference.
You were there, Kevin, right when the program started its upsurge. And I always talk back about the 95 team because to this day, I felt like the 95 team might have been better than the 96 team that went to the Independence Bowl. The 95 team is the team that's featured in John Feinstein's book. And I think we went 5-1 that year, if I'm not mistaken.
5-1, yeah.
And we lost some really tough ball games. We lost out at Washington. That was my first game as the SID at West Point. Went out there with Mike Albright, and my first game. So I'm, a little bit swimming, and we're beating Washington in Washington. And back then the press box was halfway to heaven up there. I mean, it was incredibly high. And,
yes, it was.
And
you can see Lake Washington from it very clearly.
It was gorgeous. It was fantastic. And, I'm my first game flying solo as the SID. I've been at West Point at that point for 8 years, but still a little butterflies. And it was a milestone day for me. I remember taking a picture with Mike and a few people from our staff walking in that day. And it was just, one of those events for me. And then the phone starts ringing. Back then, you don't have cell phones, and ABC is calling. They want to know when the last time Army beat a nationally ranked team was. And I'm like, you know what? All the notes, I tried to be buttoned down as much as I could that day. My first game is SID. I'm on the phone calling Matty Salvani back in the press box saying, Matty, you got to help me here. It's my first day as the SID, and I don't have this answer. And sure
Matty
enough,
was like, all right, give me a minute. I got it right here.
Up with it, 1972 against Air Force. And as it turns out, we didn't win that game, but we lost, I think, within 7 points. I think we're inside the 5 late. And honestly, it was the noise in that stadium that caused us all kind of problems. I remember the players talking about, they said they'd never experienced that type of noise before. They said it was like one of the military jets on the tarmac. It was that loud. And then we lost to Notre Dame, of course, that wonderful game against the Irish down at the Meadowlands when Ivory Covington pushed out Ron Lashinsky when we went for 2 instead of going for the tie. And I, to this day, laud Bob Sutton for that decision.
Absolutely.
And people wanted to make Ivory Covington out to be something iconic, but Ron Lashinsky had him outweighed by 80 pounds, but Ron Lashinsky was heading out of bounds, and all Ivory Covington had to do was lock him up and shove him out of bounds. Great play, but it wasn't because Ron Lashinsky got outmanned. It was because Ron Lashinsky's momentum was already taken out of bounds. And I happened to be standing right on the sideline where he got pushed out. But that was a great team. And the corner turned, I think, in those tough losses, Kevin, and you probably would attest to that. And then that day, that monumental day at Boston College, where it was, I kind of liken the weather to what happened. It was kind of like the gates being blown over for us. The floodgates got wiped down, and now the Army program was gonna take the nation by storm in that next year. And my goodness, it rained hard that day. John Feinstein covered it so well in the book. That was really his first opportunity to get into the locker room. We had convinced Bob Sutton to give him a little bit of an opportunity. And after the game, we won 49-7. Bob looked at John and looked over to me and said, "Yeah, you're in here the rest of the year. You got free access."
About 3 weeks ago when we got together, Bob, I wish you joined us because we had some football alums, including Cantaloupe. And of course, we talked about the game at Boston College when Bob Sutton's famous, "We're going to take the hill" pregame speech. We're taking Chestnut Hill. And up 42-0 at halftime, downpour. Boston College looked like it didn't even want to come out for the second half. But Cantaloupe and I got a cheap laugh after the game when you were basically wrestling Brian Tucker away from the media as he was just lambasting Boston College football team, their desire, their guts, the lack thereof, and lack of intestinal fortitude. And as he was going on, I remember meeting eyes with you, and I saw this look of horror on your face, knowing that these quotes were going to reverberate for a bit. And Jimmy had reminded us that I guess he got a nice little tune out by Coach Sutton as well, Brian, for those comments. But it was just kind of the euphoria of the win, and beating a team of that magnitude in their own home field. Part of an amazing season. You left Washington on the 1 yard line, down 8, could have tied that game. But like you said, the crowd was going crazy, and it's just a tough situation. So many parts of that season were so special. I said that to Sal. I said, it might be a cool thing to have a 25-year anniversary of the '95 team because of the impact that they had on the entire Army program, into the new millennium. So that was such a special season. I just found it funny that you mentioned that one, but I had also forgotten that was kind of your entrance into the arena, so to speak.
Yeah, I kind of got thrown in the fire there because John had wanted to try and do this book for several years. And we laugh about this all the time. And Bob Kinney was the SID, and Jim Young wanted no part of that type of access. Bob Sutton took over, and he was very, very leery about it. So it was my first year as the SID, and John, I have a great relationship with John now, but we were just becoming acquainted with each other. And he said, "Hey, Bob, I hate to put you in this position, but I've been trying to write this book for several years. I've gained access from Navy, and I'm going to go ahead and write this book one way or another this year. So if you won't provide us the same access that Navy does or similar access, it's going to be one-sided. It's going to be a book about Navy football, and it's not going to show glowingly on Army. And by nature, you as the SID." So we went to work with Bob Sutton. Jim Cantaloupe was a dear friend of mine at the time, a player, and I got with Jimmy and talked to him, and we tried to get with the captains to get with Coach Sutton and get him to say yes, and he was still very hesitant. And then finally, about 3 or 4 weeks into the season, we got him to agree to let John in on a test run at BC. And that was the best game we possibly could have chosen. And I think John, looking back now, realizes that he was very fortunate that he didn't write the book in '92 or '93 when Army really struggled and there wasn't great storylines. But '95 was a potpourri, as you can remember, Kevin, of storylines. And it really made for a tremendous read. It really is a book and that any Army fan should read and maybe skip over that part about the post game and Boston College, because I was horrified as Brian Tucker stood up there and just absolutely took the BC Eagles to the woodshed. And I had to remind him afterwards. I said, Brian, your career, I think he was a senior, your career is done. But we have BC on the schedule a few more years down the road, and somebody might have to pay the price of those comments. So, but he was euphoric, and it was a monumental upset. I mean, when you think about upsets, usually they're within a touchdown or 10 points. This was a 49-7 victory over a team that was at least a 2-touchdown favorite over Army that day. So,
and knowing Coach Sutton and seeing how the game unfolded, it could have been about 65-7. You know, I think he played everybody except for the equipment manager in the second half. It's, you know, and that's Bob for you. You know, where other coaches might have rubbed it in a little bit. And BC had a pretty good quarterback named Matt Hasselback, who I had forgotten about until Jimmy brought it up a few weeks ago. They had Hasselback, and when we played Washington had a pretty good safety named Lawyer Malloy, right?
Yeah.
So, it's
Don
just, you know,
James was the coach.
Yeah, remembering those names and those faces, but the BC. When I look back on games I've covered, other than Army Navy games, BC game jumps out just because of the magnitude of the win for you guys.
It was no pun intended. It was a watershed moment for that program at that time. It was a watershed moment, and I'm convinced that that's what led to all the success in '96. It was those character building losses, and then it was that we can do this, we can accomplish great things against Boston College, and I think that really knocked the door down and led to the great successes of '96.
Absolutely.
Talking about like memorable seasons, Bob, this year, what Army had to go through, like you talked about, putting together the schedule, right? And during a pandemic, I wrote in a blog that this could be also considered a memorable season that will go down a little bit in history, considering what the team accomplished: back-to-back wins over Army and over Navy and Air Force to win the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. I mean, how would you say you see this season as falling into like the history of Army football?
Oh, I think you're spot on, Sal. Someone joked with me. I don't think they were joking. They said that they hoped that I had been taking notes because this would be a book. This year would have been a great book to write about this season, about the scheduling piece, about how difficult it was, and where you were at one point, who was on our schedule at one point, and how it changed. You know, one week in August, I went to Mike Buddy and told him, hey, you know, we have 9 new opponents on our schedule. Like, that was a big deal. And then the following Monday, I said, hey, Mike, we have 9 new opponents from last Monday that weren't on our schedule a week ago that are on there now. And that went on for quite a while. But when you think back to the end of the year, there'll never be a year like this again. I mean, hopefully, right? God willing, Army and Navy Army will never play Navy, hopefully again at West Point. Army will hopefully never play Navy and Air Force in back-to-back weeks. And if they ever do play again in back-to-back weeks, what's the chances of a 10-7, 15-0, and then, oh, by the way, there's a bowl game coming up, which at that time we thought was going to be a week later, and then we had to pivot and call an audible and basically change the charter plane in the air almost and steer it from Shreveport to Memphis. So, I think, Sal, you're right. I think this will be one for the ages. I think there should be a book written about this season at some point in time, and I think a great tribute to our superintendent, General Williams, who was so committed to keeping our football players safe and healthy, but not only our football players, the entire academy, the bubble that he instituted back in August, and then, you know, we isolated our players because General Williams knew how important it was to the academy and really to the nation that we were going to be able to get to pull off that Army-Navy game and play Air Force a week later. So I know that he's gotten some criticism because of that, but it was done for a higher purpose. It wasn't about just football. That Army-Navy game was so important to the nation, and General Williams knew how important it was, and he felt an obligation to deliver that game to this country at this point in time. So I give him a tremendous amount of credit, as I do Mike Buddy as the athletic director, who was able to navigate these waters throughout the year, be very willing, very accommodating. You know, Jeff Munkin, anytime I called him with an opponent, hey, Bob, we'll play anyone, anywhere, anytime. You tell me, you give me the opponent. I don't care if it's 48 hours in advance. We'll fly wherever to play someone. So we were really fortunate. We had a great leadership triad there in General Williams, Mike Buddy, and of course, Coach Monken, that allowed for all the successes that we had this year. And our players deserve a lot of credit too. They did the right things. They stayed healthy, and some way we were able to play 12 games. I'm disappointed. It just happened. We got kind of caught at the end. We had some players that weren't available in the bowl game, or else I think we probably would have won that game and finished 10-2 that year. I really believe that in my heart, that if we would have had a full complement, that we would have won that game in Memphis. But it was a thrill to end the game at that bowl game where we were trying to get into that game for many, many years. I'd worked with Steve Earhart for us to get there, and we finally got there.
Yeah, no doubt. I thought that was a fitting game to end the season with, maybe not the result that the team or the staff might have wanted, but I thought it was a fitting way to and you look at what was on. Oklahoma was on the schedule. BYU at one point was. I'm sure there's more, Bob. I'm sure you ran through I'm sure you ran through the SEC. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm sure there was a bunch of options there. Just to close this, what will be as you spend your last maybe month or so at West Point? What are you gonna maybe remember is maybe too much of a loaded question, but what were you kind of what were your thoughts center around as you wrap your West Point career?
Well, I'll tell you, Sal, it's going to be difficult. I'm going to work at West Point through the month of March, and then I'm going to take the month of April and try to get settled in up in Syracuse and begin that transition. But it's about the people, and we touched on that. It's like the faces that are on this box, on this call right now. People like Kevin Gleason and people like yourself, Sal, and Tim Volkman and Tracy Nelson Volkman, and all my dear friends that I was blessed to work with. I mean, that's what I'm going to think about. I mean, all these other memories. You're right. I'm blessed. I grew up here. I grew up an Army fan, and I think about these incredible opportunities that I had working with Brian Cashman and the New York Yankees and owners of NHL hockey teams and folks from the Jets and the Philadelphia Eagles and the Phillies. I mean, it's incredible. And I started going through them, and I asked myself, do you really want to leave this job? Are you really going to regret that? But I look at it as it has been an unbelievable opportunity for a young guy from Middle Hope, Marlboro High School, Newburgh, New York, to come here, live out a dream. And it's been a dream. And I've been blessed for 34 years. And I just feel like, this is an opportunity that I owe myself a chance to go lead a program, but it's not really that. It's more about the fit. I feel like there's a calling for me to help up at Lemoyne, and I don't say that to sound self-serving. I just feel like I can lend some of these experiences that I've gained over 34 years, whether it be in locker rooms or some experiences in the business world. And I think I can go help that institution in some capacity. I hope I can anyway. And I just feel like there's a fit there. I feel like a little bit of a calling to go up there. And when I think back about my days at West Point, it's going to be about the people. It's going to be about the cadet athletes. It's going to be about the people that I was so blessed to work with outside of the academy. And then, of course, my teammates that I was able to work with, people like Tim and Tracy and Brian and Mike Albright and on. And the list goes on and on and on. And, of course, Matty Salvani, who is, just such a dear friend. And that's what I'll think about. I'm going to try not to think too hard about it because I'm an emotional person, and Kevin knows he's seen me work myself up in those softball huddles with our girls. But I'm a passionate person, and I think when you're passionate, you care and you show emotion, and that's who I am. I care. I've cared deeply about West Point, about the mission, about the student athlete, about the cadet athlete, and about the people that we've been able to work with, and that family piece. So it's going to be hard. There's no doubt about it. I've loved every second of it. Who knows what the future will bring, right? But at this point, I'm really going to be focused on going up to Lemoyne and hopefully lead that program and help lead that program and help lend some of my experiences that I've been so blessed to have here. Hopefully bring those and share those and maybe in some small way we could advance that program.
Yeah, you look at, they say that coaches have like their coaching tree with assistants that move on, right? And you've had your own kind of sports information or communications tree, right? I mean, you have so many people out there. Tim is one of them. So it really shows that it's not just, you're right. It's about the relationships. It's about the people. And, I'm sure that certainly continues on. That never ends, right? That never ends. So,
well, the one thing, Sal, that I think that the one thing I will pat myself on the back is I think I've always had a pretty good eye for talent and bringing in really good people that made me look awfully good. People like Tim and Tracy and Brian and Mike Albright and all those folks. And Kevin can attest, on the softball field, I feel like I had a pretty good ay for talent. I surrounded myself with a lot of our local girls around here that had some of them just needed an opportunity to thrive. Kevin's daughter was one of them that maybe didn't get the opportunity that she deserved during her high school years. But then with our team against college level competition, she thrived and flourished. So I really feel like that is the one gift that I have is that I have an eye for talent, and I'm smart enough to know that I need to surround myself with really good people to make myself look good, because I might not be capable of doing it on my own.
Any last shout outs from Kevin or Tim before we leave?
Go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just like I said, thinking through a lot of memories were coming back. Listening to Bob talk and thinking about our years at West Point. But I mean, Bob's work ethic is unmatched, and wherever he goes, Des Moines, he's absolutely going to work his tail off to be the best person he can be every day, make the program he's associated with better every single day. So Lemoyne absolutely hit a home run when they hired Bob, for sure. And I go back to when I first met Bob. It was at a sports information conference. I'm trying to remember where it was, but I mean, I was a assistant Division III SID, just kind of getting into the business. And I remember meeting Bob and just saying hi, and he took a genuine interest in where I was and what I was doing. And he always did that at conferences that we went to. I mean, it didn't matter if you worked at a Division I college or smallest Division III college in the world. Everybody always knew Bob because Bob took an interest in who they were, and everybody liked being his friend just because he was the best guy in the world. And it's the same 25 years later. Since I've been in this business, it hasn't changed one bit. He's still the same guy he was the first day I met him. He hasn't changed a bit. So, like I said, Lemoyne hit a home run hiring Bob. He's going to absolutely crush it. I like that he says he takes pride in the great people he hired. I like to think I'm one of them, and we're really excited, Tracy and I, to have Bob a little closer to Rochester where we are. I started at RIT a year ago, and it's going to be awesome having him and Jen only about an hour and a half away. So we look forward to seeing him soon.
Awesome, Kevin.
Oh, good stuff. I could go on, and Bob and I, we've had these conversations before about what he's meant to me and what he's meant to our family, especially my daughter. I mean, what he's done for her as her softball coach is something I can't even put into words. I get choked up thinking about it because she was a type of player that needed that type of push, encouragement, I guess, suffering from confidence, and kind of a part-time player at Minnesink who, never really got the great opportunity to be a starter. And Bob took her on, and on 18U, and what he showed was the power of the coach and what the impact a coach can have on a kid when that kid knows that the coach is in her corner, It's unbelievable. You hear about it and you see it from afar, but when you see it up close, it's really, really an amazing thing, and that's what she experienced. She finally found a coach who believed in her, and it was just unreal. So that gets me choked up thinking about that and thinking about the impact he's had on her. And I know that's something she'll never forget, and we'll never forget. So before I start bawling like a little kid here, I'll let go. But Bob knows how I feel about him, and I hope I know everybody knows how Bob has done it right at West Point, and he's done all the right things, and he's left a heck of a model for people to follow. And anybody who wants to get into that business, if they want to do it the right way, they just spend some time with Bob, because that's he's done it the right way there, and now he's going to go do it the right way at Lemoyne, and I can't wait to witness that one from afar. So, Bob, you know how I feel about you, and I thank you for everything. And on behalf of the Old Times Herald Records staff, we thank you and your staff for all that you did for us. And we wish you the best in your next chapter.
Absolutely, Bob. Thanks for hopping on. Thanks for all the time tonight, and all the best at Lemoyne. And we'll wrap this podcast up. Follow us on all the podcast platforms. Rate, review, subscribe, and thanks to Tim Volkman and Kevin Gleason for joining us, and our special guest tonight, Bob Beretta. Thanks a lot.
Sal, thanks. Tim, it was good to see you. Bob, we will talk soon.
Guys, it was a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time, and you're the best. Anytime. I'd love to talk to you again. Good luck with this adventure, Sal. I think it's first rate, and you deserve great success. So good luck to you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Thank you for listening to the Black Knight Nation podcast with your host, Sal Interdonato. For more information on your Army Black Knights, visit blackknightnation.com. And be sure to subscribe, follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcast app.